This historic English parkland in the east of England, with its impressive entrance avenue, groves of magnificent trees and clumps, adjacent woodland and shelter belts, has just about everything we regard as classic. It contains over 95% of the English oak species. But all is not well. 10 years ago, the owners began to lose oaks at a more sudden rate. It was obvious that this was more than chronic oak decline, and reports from across the whole eastern region confirmed the alarming spread of what the scientists now call acute oak decline. The race was on to find the cause, and forest research, backed by the Woodland Heritage charity and DEFRA, soon identified 13 new bacteria species from the bleeding lesions, which were the first indications of a microbial cause to the stem lesions. Soon foresters began to report massive increases in the exit holes of the agrillus beetle, and it was recognised that another factor was at play here. A two-pronged attack was truly not what we needed. This story is not just about 300 to 500-year-old oaks, but here is an 80-year-old tree with severe acute oak decline symptoms. We should ask ourselves perhaps how many of today's young oaks will become tomorrow's ancient trees. For the destiny of our oaks is plainly at risk. It is time now to show you the work of the talented young scientists who are carrying out the research in the field and in the laboratory under the leadership of Dr. Sandra Denman. The route to management guidance is only through research. They have made very significant progress, and Sandra will now take up the story.
A key research challenge was to discover the cause of these stem bleeds and the lesions in the tissue underneath them. We wanted to carry out experiments, and with the bacteria in hand, the missing ingredient was the beetle. But in the wild, this little native beetle is elusive and has a cryptic life cycle. So it was necessary to rear the beetle in the laboratory to obtain eggs and baby larvae for experiments. Following fertilization, eggs were laid, collected, and incubated. Here is Emma Bonham, Woodland Heritage funded PhD student, checking the health of the eggs. This is the very first time that this procedure has ever been achieved. Logs were inoculated with larvae, eggs, and bacteria to test the combined effects. Here, Katie Reed is making a small wound to an oak log and placing baby larvae, eggs, and bacteria in it. The wound is closed and sealed over with sticking tape. The logs are then incubated for several months in a growth chamber. To assess the effects of these inoculations, the bark was pared away to expose the lesion. Tiny chips of tissue were cut out and placed on culture media to confirm the cause of the lesion. The inner tissues of the log were then further pared away to reveal the galleries of agrillus larvae, which in parts were becoming necrotic and forming part of the lesion. Again, chips of tissue were cultured, and the results clearly showed that the bacteria could be isolated along the length of the infected galleries, implicating the larvae in spreading the bacteria inside the tree. This research, so far, is really a significant step forward. Besides laboratory studies, fieldwork is also needed to understand why trees become infected in the first place. We want to know how trees are stressed or predisposed to infection. Studies on how the disease spreads are also important, so that we can develop management tools. At each site, healthy and diseased trees are surveyed using a GPS trimble, and maps are generated showing the relative positions to each other. Accurate scientific data is accumulated, and Nathan Brown is passing that on to Andy Griffiths, who is about to begin his PhD study and will be funded by Woodland Heritage. Visible tree condition is assessed and recorded for monitoring purposes. Stephen Wall, from Forest Research, is photographing the trees and recording their condition in the field. Dendrochronologies are underway to identify historic growth patterns and tree stresses. Long cores are removed from trees so that the growth rings can be measured and analysed. Here, Mary Gagan from Swansea University is measuring the diameter of the trees, while Neil Matthews prepares the tool for coring. Mary is cutting a core through the tree and stores it for further analysis. To learn more about the current health of the trees, it is necessary to study their metabolism. Jason Finch from Aberystwyth University is removing small plugs of tree tissue, carefully trimming the bark off and storing the plugs in liquid nitrogen so that they can be analysed later. We are hoping to learn whether there are any specific chemical signals that might identify stress in the trees. Joseph Wutz from Rothamsted Research is also looking at chemicals in the foliage. These gases are given off by the tree through its leaves. When trees are stressed, they release volatile distress signals which attract the beetle. Here he is placing leaves in a bag with a filter, which will trap the gases. After 8 hours, he washes the filters and captures the volatiles for further research. Joseph has already identified a number of compounds that will attract the Agrillus beetle, but of course, there is more work to be done. The chemistry of the leaves can also be related to the soils under the trees and their roots, so foliage is being collected by tree climbers so that it can be analysed in the laboratory and related to soil condition. The tree climbers are going high up into the crown of the trees to sample leaves from 4 points around the crown. To understand more about the soils beneath each tree, Frank Ashwood from Forest Research is taking soil cores for analysis. A pit is dug to get a compositional profile of the soil. And Sue Benham prepares the samples in the back of the van on site. Both fine and buttress root samples are taken, and here you can see Tom and Kelly sampling fine roots for further laboratory analysis. It has become very apparent that we need to better understand the relationship between major root pathogens such as armillaria, the honey fungus, and oak declines. We have successfully confirmed 4 different species of armillaria on oak in British woodlands, and have recently come across a number of very damaging cases involving armillaria, often in combination with the AOD bacteria. It is very evident that there is much more work to be done.
I've always thought that naming this disease acute oak decline, despite being politically and probably scientifically correct, was the wrong word because it's literally not dramatic enough. Whereas viewers of television and people listening to the radio would not realise the severity of it when it was merely called a decline. Now, we in the last few shots have shown you the death of a 300-year oak in 4 years. Now, that is pretty alarming. Now, we think that this disease should be called acute oak death. Nothing less, and that should be it. One of the most heartening results of Woodland Heritage sponsoring this AOD research has been the sight of no less than 13 young talented scientists working in unison with Dr. Sandra Denman at Forest Research and achieving so much. These people are very talented and totally committed. We operate a very special, close relationship with DEFRA and Forest Research. We have achieved so much in a short time and have proved that this working private-public partnership can achieve amazing results. We owe them a great debt for their commitment in these very difficult times. This short film was intended primarily to thank our supporters who've backed us from day one. We thank them so much for that support. We have achieved an awful lot and we do thank them for their commitment. There'll be credit shown at the end of this film, naming the various people who've given so generously. But this is just the beginning of a very long and arduous process to sort out this complex disease. We can't stop now. We're getting so close to understanding this disease. And it's a disease which the foresters and tree growers of this country desperately need answers to. They're the ones who are waiting for the results, and they won't be far off. But it means we've got to commit to further work and further support. And I do urge you all to take this so seriously, because the English oak tree has never been threatened like this before. So please help fund this important Woodland Heritage appeal. Thank you.